A black woman in a sleek blazer strode up to the first-class check-in at Skyport Haven, only to be met with a smug, "You're not on the list." Before the agent could draw his next breath, she delivered a lesson so precise and searing it left them staggering in regret. Not a selfish halt of the heavens, but a swift, unyielding strike they'd carry like a scar. That morning, April Jackson swept into Chicago O'Hare's Terminal 2 with a quiet intensity that didn't plead for attention, but seized it outright. At 40, she was the CEO of Jackson Dynamics, a tech titan that resurrected dying startups into profit-churning empires. Her name was carved into industry honors and patent ledgers, her face a purposeful enigma. She wore a navy suit tailored to a fine edge but devoid of ostentation, a leather tote slung over her shoulder, no garish logos, just the subtle sheen of authority. Her braids were pulled into a tight low bun, her gold watch ticking with metronomic calm as she approached the counter. Primed for Flight 357 to Seattle. The agent, Mason Grayson, a wiry man with a wilted tie and a badge pinned askew, didn't lift his gaze from the screen. "Boarding pass," he grunted, fingers drumming a bored rhythm on the keyboard. April slid it across. "First class, 9:15 a.m. Her name in stark bold print, undeniable as stone. He scanned it, squinted at the barcode, scanned again, then flicked it back with a dismissive twist of his wrist, like it was a crumpled receipt. "Nope, not in the system." April's voice came steady, laced with steel. "It's there. Check it properly." Mason's lip curled into a smirk, his eyes brushing hers for a split second before darting away. "I did. You're not on this flight. Maybe you meant economy. Over there." He jerked his thumb toward the snaking mess of general boarding, already pivoting to the next passenger, a white guy in a polo who got a brisk, "Sir, good morning," and a nod. April planted her feet, voice dropping to a low, taut hum. "I'm not moving. This is my ticket. First class. Paid. Confirmed. Look again." Mason's smirk wavered. He leaned forward, jabbing the keys harder, the screen flickering like a taunt. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, you're not here. Step aside now, or I call security." The line rustled. A woman in a cashmere scarf huffed audibly. A businessman tapped his foot with a glance at his watch, irritation rippling outward. April pulled her phone, scrolled to the confirmation email. Date, time, seat 2A, Skyport Haven's logo blazing in black and white, and held it out. "Explain this then." Mason snatched it from her hand, skimmed it with a scoff, and tossed it back across the counter. The paper skidded to a stop. "Fake. Glitch. Whatever. Doesn't match. You're done here." His tone was a shove, eyes sweeping over her like she was a speck to brush off, his posture screaming he'd already won. A second agent, Ella Carter, ponytail yanked tight and arms crossed like a barricade, slid in beside him, her boots clicking sharp on the tile. "What's the holdup?" she snapped, her glare landing square on April, summing her up like a trespasser. "Your system's wrong," April said, calm but unbendable. "I'm first class. Fix it." Ella snatched the boarding pass, scanned it herself, her lips thinning into a hard, skeptical line as the scanner beeped a flat rejection. "Nothing." "Sorry, ma'am, you're not boarding." Mason rocked back on his heels, arms folding, smugness blooming fresh across his face. "Told you. Move, or we escalate this." The air snapped tight. April felt it deep, that old bitter sting of being weighed and discarded, her right to stand there questioned by two people too careless to dig deeper. She locked eyes with Mason, then Ella, her voice cutting through the terminal's drone like a blade through silk. "You're making a mistake. Correct it, or I will." Mason barked a laugh, short and jagged, his head tipping back. "Yeah, go for it, sweetheart." Ella's smirk bloomed, her fingers already curling around her radio, thumb hovering over the call button, poised to summon muscle. April didn't flinch. She stepped closer, boots silent but deliberate on the scuffed floor, now just inches from the counter's edge, and pulled out her phone. One call, one number, she kept locked in her arsenal for moments like this. Not for theatrics, but for precision, a weapon she wielded with surgical intent. "Marcus," she said, voice a honed edge. "O'Hare, Horizon Gate. They're denying me first-class tickets. Legit. Handle it now." Marcus Reed, her COO and oldest confidant, didn't hesitate. His tone clipped and certain over the line. "Got it. 2 minutes." She hung up, pinned Mason with a stare that could have shattered concrete, and waited. Her presence was a quiet storm swelling in the space. Mason shifted uneasily, his fingers returning to the keyboard, tapping faster now. A faint sheen of sweat glistened on his brow. "Come on, damn it," he muttered, his voice cracking as the screen blinked, froze, then spat out a red error message. "Invalid entry." He slammed a palm on the counter, the sound sharp, drawing a flinch from a kid in line clutching a stuffed bear. Ella's radio crackled to life. She pressed it to her ear, her eyes widening as a voice hissed through the static, urgent and low. She shot Mason a look, not smug anymore, but rattled, her free hand clutching the counter's edge. "What the hell's happening?" Mason snapped, his voice pitching higher as he jabbed the keys again. The screen was now a chaotic flicker of glitches, lines of code, pop-ups, a digital meltdown. Passengers murmured louder, a ripple of unease spreading. "What's taking so long? I've got a connecting flight." "This is insane." April didn't move, didn't speak. Her silence was a weight pressing down on the chaos. Her eyes tracked every twitch of Mason's hands, every dart of Ella's gaze. The PA system cut in, sharp and jarring. "Flight 357 to Seattle. Boarding paused. Stand by for updates." Mason swore loud and raw. "You've got to be kidding me." His fingers flew over keys that refused to obey, the screen now a mess of frozen data. Ella's radio buzzed again, louder this time. She flinched, turning her back to the counter, whispering fiercely into it. "Yes, sir. She's still here." "What do you mean, check the VIP list? I don't have access to—" Her voice cut off, drowned by the rising tide of passenger complaints. A man in a suit shouted, "I paid for first class." "Fix this now." A woman with a stroller rocked it back and forth, muttering, "Unbelievable." April stood still, her tote resting by her feet like a soldier's pack, her posture unyielding. She was the eye of the storm, watching Mason's bravado crumble, Ella's confidence fracture, the gate descending into a frantic tangle of noise and desperation. Then the crowd parted, and a man in a Horizon Air blazer, Greg Hall, the gate supervisor, burst through. His tie dangled loose, forehead slick with sweat, his badge flapping against his chest as he half ran to the counter, his eyes locked on April, wild with urgency. "Miss Jackson?" "April Jackson?" She nodded once, slow and deliberate, her gaze a steady burn that made him shrink. Greg's voice quavered, high and brittle. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. There's been a terrible mix-up. You're cleared. We're fixing this right now." April's eyes didn't soften, her tone cold and piercing. "Fixing what? Why was I denied?" Greg's hands twisted together, his knuckles white. "A system flag. It's being corrected, I swear." "Flag," she cut in, voice rising just enough to nail him to the spot, her words a hammer striking steel. "What flagged me, Greg?" "My ticket's real. Your agents didn't think I was?" "Why?" Mason shifted behind the counter, his shoulders hunching, eyes darting to the floor. Ella clutched her radio, staring at her boots, the static hissing unanswered. Greg wiped his brow with a trembling hand, stammering, I don't know yet, ma'am, but corporate's on it. I've got calls out. Not good enough, April snapped, stepping closer, her shadow looming over him, her voice a controlled blaze. You don't get to shrug this off. I want names, reasons. Now. The gate fell silent, a vacuum of sound. Passengers froze mid-complaint. A toddler's wail choked off. The air was thick with a tension that hummed like a live wire. Greg's radio crackled again. He flinched, lifting it to his ear with a shaking hand, his face draining to a sickly gray as a voice barked through. Miss Jackson, he croaked, his throat bobbing. They're pulling the logs. Your ticket's reinstated. Boarding's back on. Please let me... No, she said, her voice a whip crack that echoed off the glass walls. You don't escort me anywhere until I know why your people looked at me and saw a fraud. Greg swallowed hard, his Adam's apple jerking. It's coming from upstairs. 2 minutes, I swear. April crossed her arms, her watch ticking like a bomb, her stare drilling through him, unrelenting. Behind the counter, Mason and Ella huddled like cornered animals, screens flashing red errors. System failure. Access denied. Phones rang off their hooks, a relentless shrill cutting through the clamor. Mason slammed the keyboard again, his voice fraying as he yanked at his tie, loosening it like it was choking him. Ella hissed back, Shut up, Ty. You heard the radio. She's somebody big, and we're screwed. Passengers pressed in tighter, their voices a rising tide. What's the delay? I've got a meeting in 3 hours. Fix this or I'm suing. Greg waved them off, his arms flailing. We're working on it. Please, just wait. His plea was swallowed by the din. April stood unmoved, a granite pillar in the storm. Her presence bent the chaos around her. She didn't pace, didn't sigh, just watched Mason's hands tremble, Ella's jaw clench, Greg's panic swell into a full-blown meltdown. A woman in line whispered to her husband, Who is she? A businessman pulled out his phone, recording the red light blinking. The gate was a pressure cooker, and April held the valve. Then Greg's radio erupted, a voice cutting through the noise, loud and clipped, audible to everyone within 10 feet. Jackson's cleared. Chief Executive Officer of Jackson Dynamics. VIP status buried in the system. Agents botched it. Get her on now. Greg spun to her, eyes wide as saucers, pleading in a rush. Miss Jackson, you're cleared. First class, top priority. We didn't know. She fired back, her voice slicing through his excuses like a guillotine. You assumed. Who trained them to assume? She jabbed a finger at Mason and Ella, who shrank under her gaze. Mason's bravado evaporated, his hands stuffed in his pockets. Ella's smirk was gone, her face pale as she clutched the counter for support. Greg floundered, his words tripping over each other. We'll find out, ma'am, I promise. You will, she said, her tone final, and you'll tell me. She grabbed her tote, slung it over her shoulder with a fluid motion, turned toward the gate, then paused, spinning back on her heel. One more thing, those two, they don't touch another passenger until they learn respect. Make it stick. Greg nodded fast, frantic, his head bobbing like a puppet. Yes, ma'am. They're off rotation. Retraining starts today. April boarded first in line, head high, no apologies required. Mason and Ella were sidelined, Greg shouting orders in her wake, his voice cracking as he tried to regain control. Her seat was wide and plush, the flight attendant's welcome, Ms. Jackson, crisp with a nervous tremor. She didn't sink into the comfort. She sat upright, replaying the clash, the smirk, the dismissal, the exact second they realized she wasn't bluffing. Marcus texted, You good? Yeah, she shot back. Nailed him hard. He sent a fist bump emoji. She allowed a faint smirk, real and fleeting, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. By noon, Horizon's gate was a wreckage. Mason and Ella were yanked from duty, Greg on the phone with corporate, passengers still buzzing about the woman who froze the flight. She hadn't frozen it, just bent it until it bowed to her will. Word raced through the ranks. Horizon issued a memo, agents reassigned, system flags under scrutiny. April's name marked untouchable. She landed in Seattle, met by Marcus, who grinned wide as she stepped off the jetway. Heard you made them sweat buckets. They earned every drop, she said, brushing past him, her stride unbroken. Lunch. Work first. They don't forget this. Back at O'Hare, Mason punched out early, grumbling about overblown nonsense as he stormed off, his badge clattering into a locker. Ella stayed, head bowed, locked into a 6 a.m. retraining she couldn't escape, her hands fidgeting with a pen. Greg emailed April that night, his tone subdued. Miss Jackson, agents disciplined. Full flag audit launched. Your input in the training module. Thank you. She read it, nodded to herself, the screen's glow reflecting in her eyes. No grand chaos, no selfish spectacle, just a lesson swift and piercing, etched deep into Horizon's core. They doubted her, regretted it in a heartbeat, and she walked away taller, leaving them to sweep up the shards of their own shattered assumptions. For every time you've been dismissed, undervalued, or told you don't belong, this one's yours. April didn't torch the place. She locked it down and kept the key. If this lit a spark in you, smash that like, share it loud, drop a comment, and subscribe because stories like hers deserve to ring out. And we're only just warming up.